Start with the sound of a motorcycle engine revving, followed by a sudden screech of tires and a gunshot sound effect. Port Charles just lost its protector, and the silence is deafening. Just minutes ago, the exit ramp for Jason Morgan ended in a scene of absolute carnage. While we all thought Jason was the one person who could never be caught off guard, today's episode of General Hospital proved us wrong. We've seen the footage, and the blood left behind at the scene suggests that the Stone Cold era might have just come to a violent, tragic end. Stay tuned, because the person behind this hit isn't a mob rival, it's someone much closer to home. We have the full breakdown of Jason's final moments right now. Hello everyone and welcome. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. General Hospital GH spoilers for the next 3 weeks, March 2nd to 20th, show that the drama is going to flare up in Port Charles. Many PC inhabitants will encounter challenges and terrifying orals. So, here's what fans can expect in the upcoming episodes. Kai Taylor, Jens Austin Astrup, will have an opportunity from March 2nd to 6th. Willow Kane, Caitlin McMullen, appears to be considering hiring Kai now that she has filled Drew Kane's Cameron Matt congressional seat. Kai may feel that sticking in Willow's inner circle and monitoring her is the best thing he can do given his knowledge of her abilities. Sonny Corinto's Maurice Bernard will have a confession to make. That could be due to Sonny's blossoming connection with Rick Lansing, Rick Hurst, and the fact that it's good to be acting like brothers rather than enemies. However, Sonny may confide in someone else about his concerns over the delicate issue with Adage team Turner Nos9 contractor Carly Spencer's Laura Wright. Next visit to Windmere may reveal how to approach the passageway that leads to the tombs. Of course, getting down there without Jen Sidwell, Carlo Roa, or Pascal, Mark, forget noticing may prove difficult. Carly may have to wait for her quest, but she will at least get the opportunity to overhear some conversations while on the site. Carly is set to receive a significant shock. So, could she eavesdrop on an instructive conversation between Sidwell and Pascal, or possibly Ross Cullum, Andrew Hawks? Marco Rios Adrian Anchondo will be unsuccessful in obtaining a medicine vial for Britt Westbourne, Kelly Thiebaud, causing her to become frustrated and later vent to Jason Morgan, Steve Burton. Meanwhile, Nathan West, Ryan Pavey, and Lulu Spencer, Alexa House-Bruning will be seen having a romantic meeting. If Maxie Jones, Kirsten Storms, witnesses the conversation, she may come clean to Lulu soon. Whatever the case, Maxie will make her feelings known and may effectively grant Lulu permission to move on with Nathan. Angry Jack Brennan Chris McKenna may corner Nina Reeves Cynthia Watro again and force her to grill Charlotte Cassadine Bluesy Burke once again. Brennan will be keen to track down fugitive Valentine Cassadine James Patrick Stewart, and he may continue to see Charlotte as his best option at obtaining information. Na may confront Charlotte and face her wrath between March 9th and 13th. Charlotte overheard Nina and Brennan's earlier altercation. Therefore, she may accuse Nina of being a traitor. Over with Dante Falconer, Dominic Zampragna, he might surprise Elizabeth Baldwin, Rebecca Herbst, with a date proposal. Dante appears to have a crush at this point, so we'll see if Liz is willing to give him a chance romantically. Willow will then have to juggle her new congressional obligations with Sidwell's demands, Drew's injections, and time with her children. Willow will have far too much on her plate. The week of March 16th to 20th could see some unsettling Rocco Falconer, Finn Carr developments. Rocco will have a role in the departure of one GH player. So, may he accidentally reveal Valentine's hideout and send him on the run? Given how much emphasis has been placed on Charlotte's confidence in Danny Morgan, Asher, and Tony San, she may accuse him of leaking information when he is not to blame. However, we know Jason's departure is imminent, so some Rocco drama could serve as a prelude to that. Regardless, Jason's departure will require some build-up, so expect some unexpected twists and turns ahead. The act will begin by erecting an escape ramp, which will result in Jason leaving the canvas, leaving a sad Brick behind. General Hospital spoilers suggest the next 3 weeks will be filled with thrilling events and unraveling mysteries. So, stay tuned. In the fast-paced world of Port Charles, where secrets are rarely kept hidden and family ties twist like the roads going out of town, a sequence of interwoven events began to emerge, shaking the foundations of countless lives. Jason Morgan, the stoic enforcer who had spent years navigating the shadows of organized crime and personal loyalty, was approaching what many believed would be his ultimate exit from the carnage he knew so well. His days had long been characterized by protection, defending those he loved, taking hits for Sonny Corinthos, and quietly bearing the consequences of decisions that left scars no one else could see. But lately, the desire for something quieter had become greater. But danger always seemed to find a way to draw him back in. Meanwhile, Sonny Corinthos, who commanded much of the underworld with a combination of charm and ruthlessness, struggled with an unusual need to unburden himself. His life had been a tapestry of betrayals, alliances, and hard-fought wins. But the last few months had forced him to confront the divisions within his own family. The confession he carried wasn't about a crime or a failed transaction. It was deeper, more personal. Perhaps it entailed acknowledging to his brother Rick that the old animosities had melted into something approximating brotherhood. Or perhaps it was about his regrets about how he treated the younger generation. His grandson Rocco, his son Michael, and even his problematic relationship with Jason. Sonny had always presented invincibility. Yet weakness seeped in at quiet moments, especially when he observed how his decisions impacted individuals who looked up to or frightened him. Dante Falconer, the determined investigator and father, attempted to maintain some semblance of normalcy in the midst of the storm. His life had been about balancing badges of pride with the complex realities of his heritage. Son of Sonny, former husband to Lulu, now negotiating single parenting and new opportunities. A date, while easy in theory, provided a rare opportunity to escape probes and interrogations. It could have been with someone unexpected like Elizabeth Weber, whose common history of grief and perseverance had ignited recent romance, or another figure proposing a new beginning. Dante approached it with caution, knowing that his heart had already been wounded, but hoping that this would be a genuine connection. He dressed carefully, checked his phone for any last-minute calls from work or home, and told himself that life in Port Charles didn't always allow for romance, but it did occasionally. Young Rocco Falconer, Dante's son, was at the center of much of the growing upheaval. As his innocence began to collide with the darker edges of the adult world around him, Rocco was no longer the young child who used to play in the background of family gatherings. He had grown into a teenager who was pushing boundaries and committing mistakes with far-reaching effects. Trouble always seemed to find him, whether it was due to peer pressure, curiosity in his grandfather's world, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Recent instances had already put him in jeopardy, such as an arrest or a run-in with the law, forcing Dante to confront his dual duties as cop and parent. But the true storm was brewing over how Rocco's acts, whether intended or not, could set off larger events, such as the departure of someone important from Port Charles. Jason's path narrowed over time. Rumors swirled that his departure would be dramatic, possibly involving a heroic act gone wrong or a premeditated move to protect others at considerable personal risk. He spent time with his two children, Danny and Scout, and provided quiet advice that spoke volumes without words. Danny, like his father, was intuitive and intensely loyal, and he felt the shift, holding closer during their time together. Jason had always been the first to step in when others failed. And now he faced the potential that his next move would take him away from the city he had defended for so long. The exit ramp was more than just a metaphor. It conjured up thoughts of a high-speed chase ending on the outskirts of town, or a tranquil drive into the unknown, leaving behind the docks, the coffee shop and the people who relied on his strength. Sonny's confession happened in phases, never all at once. He sat with Rick one evening, the two men who had been at odds for years having a drink in an uncomfortable truce. Words tumbled out about family, how blood was more important than territory, and how Sonny had spent too long pushing people away only to regret it later. It wasn't a complete unburdening. Sonny was never satisfied with half measures, but it was a watershed moment. He spoke of Rocco with a grandfather's pleasure mingled with concern, seeing that the youngster was navigating waters that Sonny had polluted. The confession relieved Sonny, but it also reopened old wounds, reminding him of losses like his Morgan and the strains on Michael. Such moments of honesty were uncommon in Port Charles and frequently fleeting. But they humanized the mob boss, revealing the man beneath the authority. Dante's date began with tentative hope. At first, the discussion flowed easily. Case studies, stories of raising children in a never-sleeping town, and finding light in the dark. There were laughter, perhaps a lingering touch, and eye contact that hinted at possibilities. However, the shadow of Rocco's misfortunes remained over it. Dante's phone buzzed with updates from coworkers and worried emails from home, jolting him back into reality. He excused himself short to take a phone call before returning with an apology and a commitment to make the evening work. Romance in this world demanded resilience, which Dante possessed in abundance. By the end, there was hope for another meeting, a modest victory over the chaos that defined their lives. Rocco's problems escalated swiftly. What began as young rebellion or a mistaken desire to prove oneself quickly escalated into something much more serious. Perhaps he witnessed something inappropriate or became involved with the wrong individuals drawn to the Corinto's name. Dante confronted him forcefully, his fatherly instincts clashing with the cop's awareness of how fast minor infractions may escalate into felonies. Rocco pushed back, defiant but terrified, disclosing glimpses of the rain which had been falling since before dawn. A constant calm presence that clouded the hospital's windows and turned the lights of Port Charles into soft halos far away. Inside the familiar corridors, the day shift began with nurses exchanging records, doctors checking updates, and patients settling into the rhythms of another long day of waiting and hoping. But under the regular buzz, tension pulsed. Everyone felt it. Something was shifting. Jason stood near the elevators, his hands in his pockets, his posture as firm as stone. He had perfected the art of stillness over the years, standing guard, maintaining a vigilant presence, standing between danger and the people he cared about. But today's calm felt different. It felt like a pause before the conclusion. He was not supposed to be here. Not really. He promised himself he'd stay away from the hospital unless there was no other option, but there were always reasons and people to draw him back into the orbit of this location. Monica was the person in question today. She had invited him to come by and said she wanted to talk. Jason believed she knew what he hadn't said aloud yet. He watched as the elevator numbers lit up and flickered. His reflection in the metal doors was older than he remembered, with lines of experience engraved onto his face. He'd survived alleyway fights, betrayals as deep as bullets, and decisions that had cost him chunks of himself. Lately, the expense has felt heavier. When the elevator doors opened, Monica stepped out, her eyes softening as she saw him. "You look like you're bracing for impact," she added gently. "Maybe I am," Jason said. They went together along the corridor, their familiar footsteps echoing. Monica escorted him to a quiet consultation room, the door closed behind them, enclosing them in a small space of isolation. "You've been different lately," she explained, folding her arms lazily. "Not far away, not cold," Jason took a breath and said, just resolved. "I am thinking of leaving Port Charles." For good this time, Monica did not appear surprised. That made things harder. "I don't think I can keep doing this," he said. "Being present, taking part in all of this, it draws people into danger. It pulls me back into situations I've tried to avoid." "You've mentioned that before," Monica remarked quietly. "I understand, but this time feels final." She examined him for a long while. "Running doesn't always mean freedom, Jason." "I'm not running," he announced. "I'm choosing something different." Monica nodded, understanding the distinction, even if she didn't fully agree. "Where would you go?" "I do not know yet." "Somewhere calm." "Somewhere." "I'm not a reminder of everything that has gone wrong." She stretched out and caressed his arm. "You are also a reminder of what has gone correctly, of those you have safeguarded, of who you are." Jason did not respond. He was no longer sure who he was, not without the roles that had shaped him for so long. Across town, Sonny sat alone in his office at the coffee warehouse, the door closed and the curtains partially drawn. The city spread out beyond the glass, gloomy and restless from the rain. He cradled a mug of coffee he hadn't touched, peering into the dark surface as if it would disclose something he hadn't seen before. The truth had been brewing in his chest for weeks, pounding against his ribs like a second heartbeat. He assured himself he was protecting people by being silent. He had told himself that such confessions just made matters worse. But recently, the silence felt like a lie, infecting everything it touched. He picked up his phone and hovered his thumb over the screen. He scanned through his contacts, pausing at people he hadn't spoken to in a long time. Finally, he put the phone down. This was not something he could handle over the phone. Later that day, Sonny entered the Metro court, his presence altering the atmosphere around him. Everyone noticed. They always have. He saw Carly at a corner table engaged in conversation with Olivia. Both women looked up as he approached, their faces tightening with concern. "Can we talk?" Sonny inquired. Carly's jaw was set. "It depends. Is this one of those conversations in which you say everything is good, but then it isn't?" "No," Sonny replied gently. "This is me saying that things aren't fine, and I need to tell you the truth." Olivia looked between them. "You want me to stay?" Sonny replied. "This affects more than just me." They sat down. The restaurant's noise reduced to a quiet whisper around them. Sonny pulled in a long breath to ground himself. "I've been lying," he admitted. "It's not about what I did, about the reason I did it." Carly's gaze sharpened. "What are you talking about, Sonny?" "I've been losing time," he said. "Blackouts. I can't account for certain moments and I didn't tell anyone because I was afraid of what might happen for my family, for my business." Olivia leaned closer, concern on her face. "That's not something you keep to yourself." "I know that now," Sonny was saying, "but I kept thinking I could do it, that I could control it, and I can't." The words hung between them, hefty but frail. Carly's rage transformed into something akin to terror. "Why are you telling us this now?" she asked. "Because someone almost got hurt," Sonny explained. "And next time it might be someone I care about." Carly reached across the table and grabbed his hand. "We will figure it out. However, you no longer have the option of doing this alone. Do you hear me?" Sonny nodded, his throat tightening. For the first time in a long time, the truth seemed like a weight lifted rather than a burden intensifying. Meanwhile, Dante stopped outside a little Italian restaurant he had never seen before. Smoothing his jacket for the third time. The atmosphere was pleasant with warm light flowing onto the damp walkway. He checked his phone, then the door, and finally the reflection in the window. He wasn't nervous about dates. He felt worried about hope. After everything he'd been through, hope felt dangerous. It entered quietly, making promises it couldn't always meet. Still, he had consented to this. A basic dinner. No expectations, just two people exploring where things could go. When the door opened, Sam came out and she smiled to see him. The sight of her relieved some tension in his chest. "You look like you're about to interrogate the menu," she told me. "Just making sure it doesn't have any hidden threats," Dante said, beaming back. They went inside, the warmth enveloping them. At first, the conversation flowed easily. Work, the city, tiny stories that filled the space without being too demanding. But underlying the lightness, there was a more tentative pulse. The question of what they were doing here and what it could mean. Sam's phone buzzed about halfway through supper. She looked at the TV, her emotions altering. "Is everything okay?" Dante asked. "Yeah," she replied, her voice wavering. "It's just Rocco." Dante's heart skipped a beat. "How about Rocco?" "He is at a friend's residence. Or he was meant to be." The text comes from a parent stating that there was some sort of problem. The restaurant's warmth suddenly felt too thin. Dante had already reached for his coat. "Let's go." They dashed out into the downpour, their focus narrowing to the necessity of reaching his son. Rocco sat on the edge of a couch in a dim living room, his hands gripped tightly. A boy his age paced close, frantically swiping on his phone. The muffled sounds of adults shouting filtered in through the kitchen. It had begun as something small, a dare, a ridiculous challenge to get something from a convenience store and prove they weren't kids anymore. Rocco had not wanted to. He had claimed it was dumb. But the laughing, the pressure, the moment when you didn't want to be the one to back out, it all happened too quickly. Now that the business owner had contacted someone's parents, everything had gotten out of control. When Dante rushed through the door, Sam closed following. Relief flooded Rocco's chest so quickly that it hurt. "Dad," he said, rising too hastily. Dante took in the image in one glance, noting the tension, shame on his son's face, and dread in the other boy's eyes. He did not raise his voice. That almost made things worse. Outside, Dante replied softly to Rocco. They stepped into the rainy night, the cold stinging through Rocco's thin jacket. "Tell me what happened," Dante asked. Rocco's voice shook as he spoke, each word harder than the last. He prepared for rage. Expect disappointment for the expression that indicated he had become someone his father did not recognize. Instead, Dante closed his eyes briefly. "You made a mistake," he replied. "This does not make you a bad kid. But choices have repercussions, and we're going to confront them." Rocco swallowed. "Are you mad?" "I'm scared," Dante confessed. "Because I want you to be safe. And because I never want you to believe you have to prove yourself by doing anything that will harm you." The honesty struck through Rocco's embarrassment in a way that ranting never could. He nodded, tears obscuring his vision. Inside, Sam spoke calmly with the other boys' parents, easing the tension. Nobody was arrested. The store's owner agreed to let it go in exchange for an apology and community service. The penalties would sting, but they would not define Rocco's life. Dante and Sam walked Rocco home at the end of the night. The rain had subsided to a mist and the city lights shone on the pavement. "Thanks for coming with me," Dante said to Sam once Rocco had gone inside. "Of course," she replied. "That's what you do for the people you care about." They stood there, the weight of the evening descending on them. The date didn't go as planned, but it felt more real as a